Electric Cafe.
Hey everybody, welcome back to day number 21 on my January 2025 30 days focused on ambient, experimental, and new age records from the 60s, 70s, and 80s. Uh, Day 21 is a review on Inoyama Land's 1983 album, which I'm not going to pronounce. The title's down below. I don't want to destroy it by mispronouncing it. But Inoyama Land was a Japanese ambient new age duo that formed in the early 80s. The two gentlemen's name is Makoto Inu and Yasushi Yamashita. This album came out again in 1983 on Yen Records, which was Haryomi's Hosono's label. Who he used to be in YMO, Yellow Magic Orchestra. This was his very desirable and really respected record label, especially in the original copies for records on this label go for a lot. And there's with the popularity of city pop and Japanese new age music in the last 10 years, prices of that label have just skyrocketed, and it's really hard to get like a original copy for a decent amount of money. So here's the reissue. Um, the sounds on here is kind of a new age with a touch of minimalism. It's almost like an environmental ambient, but there's also some sort of abstract sounds in here. I think one of the things I like most about this album is it's a lot of times, and this is, I don't want to critique Japanese producers in the early 80s, but a lot of times they're so exact on their playing that it can be a little rigid because they really care about how well the music's played, right? But sometimes when you play things are so to the point, it kind of loses a little bit of the human aspect, or a little bit of the maybe character of playing an instrument, right? I feel like this album succeeds in bridging that gap, and it's sounding a little bit more avant-garde or experimental, and not stiff like some new age can sound like, in general, and also in uh, sort of in Japanese and some city pop and stuff like that. But I feel like the reason why that I feel like that city pop and new age music and just Japanese music in general from the 80s is really popular right now on vinyl reissues is because of the technology they use and their influence, probably from the Western world, a little bit more influence in trying to sound a little bit. They're trying to create some dance music and some R&B and some free, I wouldn't say freestyle, but synth pop and new wave music, and they're sort of inspired a lot by a lot more of the, and even some disco in there as well. But I feel like they're sort of inspired a lot by a lot of music coming out, and it's infecting and um, making their sound of their music they want to do. Um, I think it's a great balance, and it's almost them taking our styles and turning it into their own, or maybe mimicking our sounds. But it's creative, and I think it's a just like when you blend different styles into one unique style, you're also blending cultures into and styles into music. So it's just a really exciting time to find the music that you do like, out of like city pop and ambient music by producers that you may have never heard of, or ones that are very hard to get and very rare. And there you have a really popular and a really popular subculture with with all the reissues coming out of Japan. And this was one of them. Um, but I do really like the this album does have some experimental uh, minimalism on here, and sort of an avant-gardeness in here, and I think that takes it a step above a lot of other Japanese new age music of the time. But if you like this album, definitely check out Yen Records as well. Um, there's a sort of also a minimal rhythm, sort of melodic ambient sound. It's kind of sweeping and uh, everything's very clean sounding. Like there's kind of an abstract minimalism going on, and there's not too many instruments going on, so they sound very separate. But that gives it sort of a minimalism and a starkness and a simplicity that is really kind of charming. Should I say? It's kind of endearing. Excuse me. Like the um, track number two called I think it's Pokala. Very minimal, very stark sounding, playful, whimsical. Um, a little bit soundtrack like as well. There's a lot of good songs on here, a lot of good moods in here, and a lot of good music um, equipment interest. Like as far as like if you're into like electronic equipment from the time and how they're used, I think how they're used will excite you and because it's definitely stands out in a lot of ways, especially for 1983. Um, there's 10 tracks on here. Track number one, um, give it 3.5 stars. Really nice keyboard. It kind of reminds me of Moby's early melodies in like 1993, 94. Moby had some melodies that are sort of like almost the same tone as this melody. But I really like it. It's kind of what he seems to do, or they do, is play on the right side like a rhythm, and then on the left side, or maybe it's a depends if they're left or right-handed, but I guess they're playing sort of like a rhythm with one hand and sort of like a melody on the other side, and so it has a very sequencer sound throughout the album, which I really like. Um, it's kind of has a little bit of sort of like if you said this album was in the late '70s, I probably wouldn't fight you on that. Um, so I feel like it does have a little bit of sort of sequencer space rock feel on these songs as well. Just a touch, you know. But yeah, first track 3.5 stars. Second track 2 3/4 stars. Track number three called Glass Chain. Um, I really like the chimes and the beautiful balance and the beautiful melody. It's my favorite track on here. I give it 3 3/4 stars. Just an awesome track. And then it unfortunately goes to my least favorite track next, which is called Pawn. It's 3 minutes. It's kind of the only really new agey, cheesy song on here. It's sort of um, it has like an electric flute on here, and the sounds make it. The sounds actually, and again, like the sounds on here make these songs better than I think they are. And in this aspect, in this song, the it's fairly cheesy, but the sounds sort of help it and make it better than it would be if it wasn't using these unique instruments on here that I feel are a lot more timeless than using like some basic keyboards of the time. I'm not sure exactly what instruments they're using on, but they really have a lot of nice effects on it. And the guy from YMO, Harami Hosono, he's listed as doing a lot of the effects on it. So um, if that's your only job is producing and using and doing the effects on an album, that's a I can and him knowing his background, I can see why I do like this. The overall processing of all the sounds on this album is really, I think, helps maybe what could be some cheesy songs sort of into a higher level. But Pawn, electric flute in there. It almost has a medieval sound to it, like a Renaissance fair or something like that. And I think the keyboard at the end helps it from helps me liking it a little bit more as well. But I give it a star and a half. I think it's in between an okay and a good song. Track number 5, 2.25 stars. Track number 6, I really like as well, 3.5 stars. This one's simple but really good. This is the perfect example. In fact, if I had to give two examples to the album, I would have you listen to Glass Chain. That's Chaim, and then the track Mizzou, Mizue. If you listen to those two tracks, you see how simple they are, but because of the instruments that they choose and the effects that they used on them, like it gives it so much personality, and that's what helped this album. And I'm assuming that's what makes this album very very well liked by people that know it. But I give that track number 6 3.5 stars. Track 7's not bad, some good sounds, but it's fairly repetitive. But I do like the abstract sound of it, and I do feel like that warrants a good, at least a good rating of 2 stars, because a lot of times, again, you don't get a lot of abstractness with Japanese producers, and I really appreciate that, because you know it I like them pushing. I like anybody pushing the boundaries of styles, and to know that some Japanese artists are doing back in '83, I think that's super cool. Track number 8, Apple Star, it's called. Second longest track, actually longest track on the album, almost 6 minutes long. It's a little bit better than the last one, but still pretty repetitive. But the sounds nice overall. I think 2.5 stars. Track number 9 is a good song. I got 3 stars, and then track 10, 2.25 stars. So I add up those tracks. 27 divided by 10 is a 2.70. Um, which gives, makes it around like a 66 or something, um, and I feel like that's a good score for the album. I feel like in some ways there's a few cheesy songs, or maybe a couple songs that don't really do too much, and then there's some songs but they're helped by good, by again good processing and good instruments actually doing the sounds. So there's a little bit of conflict there in me liking it more. Um, there's 3 songs I really like on here. There's probably 3 songs that are good, and then there's 3 or 4 that are like okay. So it's hard for me to say it's a very good album if only like 3 out of 10 songs I think are very good. In fact, when I look at the rating, I have one, two, three. I have 4 songs of the 10 songs, 3 stars or above. So again, half the album is more than half the album is less than very good. So I can't say it's very good. So I have it on the more higher side of good, in the middle, 66 out of 100. I may not like it as much as longtime fans of the album. I didn't grow up with it. I have to say that, of course, and I've only heard this in the last few years. So I could see if I heard it in 1983, I would probably be more. Um, I'd probably feel a little bit more of a tie to it, and connection with it if I grew up with it over the last 40 years. I do really respect it for what it accomplishes, but I think the songs themselves, if you kind of take away the effects and take away the sound, the instruments used, and sort of take away the good things about it, and just kind of think about the songs and where they go to. There is some abstractness, there is some beauty, but I think some of the songs they just don't, they don't really go, much. And I would probably say a little bit of our sort of soundtrack like too, but they don't really just don't do too much for me. I suppose it's hard to say exactly, but they just kind of, there's a good half of the songs on here really are just are good, but maybe okay for the most part. So it's hard to say the album is very good, but still a really enjoyable album. And I feel like I'm defending it because I'm sure somebody will come along and say, "Wow, you rated that only a good album? That's like a Japanese classic. That should be in the '80s or something." But mm, I don't know. I don't think it really strives on the experimental side to the extreme, and it doesn't really hit the notes on it being really beautiful or really spacey or expanding upon any ideas or anything like that. It just seems kind of like, you know, for the most part, some 3, 4 minute tracks. Even some 2 minute tracks on here, and a couple of them don't really go anywhere. In fact, there's what, like 3 tracks under 3 minutes. There's 4 tracks that are actually there's one, two, three, four, five or 6 tracks I think that are around 3 minutes or less. So there's a little bit more experimentalism to do to get for this album to get to a very good rating for myself. But it's still an enjoyable album, and I really point to it as an example of a Japanese um, record that succeeds on in new age music, just in general, and just unique electronics. But yeah, that's my thoughts on Inoyama Land 1983 album. All right, thanks so much. Curious if you have an opinion on it. All right, thanks.